Hello YouTube, Robin Hood Bricks here, and today I'm going to work on my 20,000 bricks under the sea cabinet, which has seen good progress recently, but I want to continue that by making the 3D element of this rock structure that we can see on the backdrop by building up a rock face that goes pretty much from here all the way to the corner and up there, kind of a jagged line. So yeah, I'm going to start at this side and make sure I include this lovely skull piece at this 45-degree angle. Cool. Good. Well, I've removed the entire biscuit, as I'm calling it, onto the building desk. And I don't know if that's going to get harder or easier when I build more rock structures on the back. It will definitely be more unwieldy, but then you never know, it might give it some strength. I just hope I won't have the same disaster as when I tried to move the undersea base and half of it fell off the other half while I was carrying it and it smashed all over the floor. That will be kind of firmly attached to the ground of this biscuit and the rocks at the same time. So yeah, ultimately it should be stronger. Anyway, well, first of all, I wanted to do some suggestions from last time from you. And the first one was quite a common one, and it was to disguise a bit better my play feature for the sharks turning round and round by having similar sort of coral growths on adjacent rocks. And I thought that was a really good idea. So I'm going to have this one with a double small bevel gear on a little rock here facing on its side. I think that will link the two together. And this slightly bigger one, I thought I'd incorporate into today's build somewhere. So yeah, look forward to seeing that about here or something like that as a beauty spot on the skull's cheek or something like that. And that will tie it all in together. So I think that is a really good idea. So thanks for that. I had a few more suggestions that I'm not going to do. One was to take off all the guns and stickers from my sharks to make them not Dr. Inferno's constructions. And, well, I don't like that one at all. I think that's part of the fun of this scene. And I always wanted a shark with a laser beam attached, of course, to its head. So that is staying. There was a bit of a split opinion on whether these fish at the front should be the silver colour or a more brighter colour. And I figure that it's kind of better to have them a bit harder to see and you have to sort of peer at them a bit longer to see all the detail. And then we can have the brighter ones much further back where they're much harder to pick out. So yeah, I think that would be a good compromise. So thanks for those suggestions, but only one done. So yeah, get primed for giving me some suggestions today. Cool, right, well, moving on to today's build, I'm going to try and do the next rock section. I don't figure I've got enough time to do it all the way to the corner, so I'm going to focus on the next sort of wedge. And when I'm doing a build like this, the first thing I do is sort of get all my burp pieces and kind of stack them roughly how I want the shape of the rock to be by the time I'm finished. And that way I kind of can play around with the rough shape and then worry about filling in all of the gaps later on. And what I'm going to do here, well, the main focus of all is to have this skull piece very prominently located here, or maybe just slightly higher on this diagonal angle. So, well, it breaks up the rock face looking so sort of right angled as it will inevitably to a degree. Also because it's very bright, and also because this is kind of a Bermuda Triangle type area with lots of wrecks, and it's all very unexplained and mysterious. So maybe this is a remnant of a past civilization, or maybe even a current one. Ooh. I already used dark tan plates in here, and I've done some more here, so I can have a cave, so it automatically looks like it's in shadow. I mean, it will be in literal shadow as well, so maybe it wasn't necessary, but it is dark tan in there, so that makes it even more pronounced. So I'm going to have something living in that cave. And then generally, I wanted it to be kind of one mountain here with a bit of a sort of valley maybe here before it picked back up again to fill to the corner, because I don't want it just being one great big uninterrupted blob. I think it needs a bit more texture. And then these feet from the station above will be sort of here and here, but also on top of the skull, right on the very end, and on top of these rocks as well. So I've really got to coordinate all the heights and stuff absolutely perfectly. So it'll, well, all hang together and work, and the station will be in the right place and all the rest of it. So yeah, there's quite a lot of things to consider. So yeah, that's the rough shape I'm going for. Now, I want to also, having thought about the sort of macro picture. Think about the micro picture as well. And one of the features that I really want to incorporate into this scene is making this look like it's been here for absolutely ages. So I'll have it completely incorporated in the rock and maybe have plants sort of growing over it and stuff. But what I really want is to have kind of a fish maybe sticking its nose out of this hole here, and maybe a couple more fish in one of the eye sockets, all just sort of swimming around it, just like they would in an aquarium where you've got the sort of castle in there or whatever other ornaments, and it just make it look really natural. And I thought if I used the bright orange fish as well, then they'd really stand out. So what I need to do, because this has got absolutely no connection points on the inside whatsoever, is basically build something on the bottom here and something on the top here that kind of overhang the back of this skull, and then have a structure joining those two bits together on the back of this. And then from that, hopefully I can have connection points, be it sort of modified bricks or modified plates, and maybe bar pieces sort of sticking out towards the eye sockets, and it's onto those that I'll be mounting my fish. So I'm probably going to focus on that a bit. And then when I've got that sort of substructure done, I can sort of then decide exactly how that's going to get mounted to the rest of these burps, and then kind of fill in from there. So yeah, that's my plan. Stage 1, get some fish in these eye sockets. All right, well, stage 1 complete, but I can't say it's been an easy process or a very enjoyable one, really, because it's been quite fiddly. A lot of sort of, when you've got it almost right and then you push a little bit too hard on the wrong place and it all sort of breaks apart again, or the fish isn't in the right position after all that work and so on. But anyway, this is what I've come up with. This is draft 1. Da, da, da. There we go. Now that might look quite simple, but it did take a lot of effort getting two fish kind of peering out of the eye socket. And the hard bit there was getting them at slightly different levels, but facing the right direction so you could see them both. And the one there in the nose socket, who is kind of peeking out as well. Maybe that's his hidey hole. And I'm not entirely wedded to these teeth. That's a palisade brick and then other bits, making it look like it's a proper skull, with a gold tooth maybe for a sort of piratey look. I'm not sure about that, so yeah, you'll definitely have to give me your opinion on that, but I've left it in for now. Another option, of course, would just be to use a stone-coloured set of teeth across the whole front there, but yeah, it gives it a bit of age, I suppose, and a bit of mystery. And then we've got one of these connections for the ultimate base that's going to be on the top of all this, on the top of the head. So, and a kind of jumper plate on the bottom, and that's where it's going to be attached, top and bottom, kind of pinned, like with my finger and thumb here, into its position. As for the back, well, it is an absolute mess of different pieces, with sort of modified plates to hold onto bars, which got robot arms holding a fish, or there we've got an aerial with another different shape of robot arm holding that fish out there. So this might look quite simple now because I've tidied it all up, and it is quite strong, he says, wiggling it with his fingers crossed. But yeah, I think now that is about as low profile as I can get it, because I didn't want you to peer through these eye sockets and see loads of ugly coloured bricks here. So I've tried to keep them either black, because it will be in very dark shadow, of course, or, you know, as low profile as I can. But you won't see too much of this, I don't think, through these holes, because they're not exactly big, and we'll be looking at it from this sort of angle, which is why I've focused on this eye socket for the fish and so on. So I think that works. Oh, sorry, Robin. I think that works really well. Still not sure about that gold tooth. There we go. So yeah, so it's very important as well to have everything lined up with kind of this center point of this foot here, because that's what it's going to pivot over. So it's sort of the axis line comes down between these two studs, goes all the way down here and to that, and that horizontally is underneath there as well. And that's just so there's one sort of axis of rotation that I can kind of plonk this on a burp, big ugly rock piece, and then turn it to the desired angle. And then I'll need a circular jumper plate on the top of this so it can reconnect with the proper sort of left-right orientation of the studs for the rest of the base. So anyway, I think I've explained that enough, but that looks pretty cool if you ask me. Definitely happy with those bright fish. So that will go on there roughly. Well, it's not going to balance at all now. I've put more pieces on the bottom, but you get the idea. There we go. That's going to look something like that. So now I can really worry about not only finalizing the position of those burp pieces, but trying to get the edges of this to marry up, because we don't want to see ugly gaps in between sort of this diagonal piece and all the ones around it. So I imagine that's going to be some wedge plates, some facet bricks, and goodness knows what else. But right, let's get started on the back. Well, this is getting much harder to show you from every angle all at once, because we've got obstacles of sharks to the left of us and loads of random pieces to the right, building a rock face in the middle with you. So I've finished this side, which has got the tan coloured burp on, decorating that with loads of slopes and so on, and connection points for adding wildlife onto later. This old dark grey one, you can barely tell is a burp piece now. I've covered it with this panel piece in the front, which is submerged slightly, this arch and all the other slopes and so on. So that's looking very disguised indeed. The next one is one of the more pointy burps, which has got its back to us. So we're using that inside out as the inside of the cave. And I'm going to continue building with another big burp, but in new dark grey. So we've got all that contrast, and I think that makes it look like a really interesting opening. Oh, I have added one piece of wildlife at this point, and that is just one fish in this yellowish greenish colour, because I figured maybe that was a cave fish. So basically he lives in the dark, and he's just peering out at what's going on with the rest of the world. So I thought that was quite a good touch, so I'll put him in now. But yeah, that can go there, and then I'll build over the top as well with this pointed burp, something like that. And then what's left is a very intriguing looking cave. I think you'll agree, the shadow sort of starts quite suddenly with that transit into dark tan, but then vanishes when we get even deeper than that. And to me, it almost looks like a prehistoric cave that you'd expect to see sort of cavemen coming out of. But what is the undersea equivalent? Well, of course, it is my swamp creatures. These are the ones whose territory is being invaded by the divers, and they're not too happy about it, quite frankly. We've got some captive in our undersea lab, and I figured having a couple in here just going about their normal lives with questioning looks on their faces would be really interesting. So I thought I'd have one just sort of standing up normally. I'm going to move these inside, and then I'll remove the legs of another one so we can add some short legs in green, and then it'll be more like a family coming out there, looking out the front of their cave going, what is going on with all this construction? I thought that'd be a really good touch. So I'm going to put them in the cave with the cave fish peering out, push these down and continue, and you can start to see it forming up. Oh, that needs to go there. It's going to be really nice. Well, I think I've got carried away because I've made quite a lot of progress before stopping to film again. Oh well. Yeah, it's going really well. I've got this bit hanging off just being the first part of the next section over here, so don't worry about that being in midair. That's not going to be the case in the future. I've got loads of connection points for plants and creatures. I've started building with studs on the side in certain places. Oh, if I can get this off, just to put some rocky details on with these interesting rock pieces, covering up white and flemish yellow orange modified bricks, because I may as well use ones that aren't going to be seen in random colours than use up my important grey ones. So that's looking good. As for the height, I think this will be just a tiny bit higher than this when it's done. I don't want to conceal too much of the backdrop that it doesn't look like it's blending in with that hill profile that's on the back of the cabinet. But we will have this valley, of course, which I've started, and you can kind of see how that's going to be. It's kind of a natural groove that's running through here and will continue up to about here, I think, with rocks on the left and rocks on the right like that. So I think that'll add a bit more interest, especially when we've got our base with its kind of legs on, well, either side of that setup. So that looks really nice. Lots of different greys and colours. You can see here the burps are quite visible, and in here hopefully they're completely disguised and you wouldn't know that it was largely burp pieces with just bits filling in all the gaps. Then I've got that coral piece that we mentioned earlier, just so it blends in with the ones that are down here. I've got more studs on the side here where we're starting to bring in some interesting wedge bricks and so on. And then this corner is probably the most interesting bit that remains, because that's obviously where the skull is going to go. And you can see I've got this tile layer here and even here, because that's where it's going to fit in on that jumper plate, like that. So it's a lot of trial and error, and you can see the sort of cheekbone hits on there, and the chin is on all of that, of course. So that looks pretty good if you ask me. So I have to keep sort of removing this and then adding a few bricks around the outside. And so far, I've got the joins pretty well done, I think, but you can't really tell. And I'm trying to use dark bricks around the outside of this skull so it doesn't sort of blend in too much, because we do want it to look like a skull, of course. Yeah, and we're already conceding it a little bit with these fish distracting us. But yeah, I think it's going really well. I'm really enjoying using these different techniques for different parts of the slope. Now the hardest bit is going to be bringing in this back of this diagonal element to the rest of the left and right, if you see what I mean. So that is going to be the next section. And I think basically I'm going to have one of these wedge plates kind of in about here. That's what I'm thinking at the moment. So I've just got to join it all together. Whew, right, I'll stop again when I've made more progress. Well, I thought you might appreciate a view from the back as well. This is all the supporting structure to hold all of this stuff up, and it's pretty ugly. I've used multicolored bricks in places where I don't think you're going to see it. Here I've used these panels partially because I've got quite a load of them, and partially because I think you might be able to see just glimpses of this through the eye sockets of the skull, which will be about here. So I didn't want them to look really ugly if they were brightly coloured in the background. And I've got a new layer on here using that wedge plate that I showed you earlier that's there, and the normal plate there, just to be the last foundation level for the last burp. So that's a new one right on the very top. I think that will be the full height of it now. And then we can get our skull and perch that in. You'll see it coming in on top of that jumper plate in there, and that just pushes on very gently there. If I can get it aligned right, it's incredibly tight fit. There we go. You just saw it clunk into place, and there is the mechanics of holding all those fish in. And it is quite dark now, which is good because, well, we don't really want to see through those eyes. So yeah, pretty ugly here, but yeah, pretty strong too. So cool. And here's the view from the other side. You can see when this is pinned in position, it will be, well, pretty seamless along here. Interesting studs on the side sort of technique there. Normal sort of stuff here. Few connection points as per. And yeah, I don't think you'll be able to see much through there when it's completely sealed into the unit. So it should be nice and dark. Yeah, very nice join. It's been quite a chore getting this to marry quite so wonderfully here and on this side, I must say. But the result is well worth it. Oh, right. Well, there is the next section of mountain finished, at least for the stonework anyway. I've started adding the nature onto it. We've got a crab up here, nice bright orange, some fish. I've just got 3 of them on robot arms attached to a modified brick with horizontal bar. And you can position those all sort of 1, 2, 3 robot arms and give a nice sort of shoal type pattern there. Obviously, we've got our orange ones that we already added. I've got one bit of vine or sort of seaweed. Basically, I'm going to be adding loads onto most of these 1 by 1 modified bricks up there. I've got my very limited edition that was donated to the channel, sort of, well, whatever that is, spongy type plant thing, going on here at Pride of Place outside the Swamp Monsters Cave. I've put another hermit crab and another little fish just on some ancillary rocks sort of in between the two. There's even a nice boulder here. So yeah, I think I'll be adding a lot more now. And you can see the skull is in position. And I've got one of the feet for the base on its head and one of the feet for the next part of the base over here. And though the perspective looks a bit crazy because they're on different heights, they are actually in a horizontal line. And I've made them a bit more interesting just by adding 2 red stripes for each of them just above the cone piece. And the top one of those is actually the jumper plate that's going to allow us to return back to the kind of 90 degrees perspective by having another thing connected just on that axis that we discussed earlier. and then going straight up as normal. And I'm going to add another fish on there, which is this anglerfish that is from the head of one of the people in the Shark Army in the Lego Ninjago movie. And that is just attached to one of these bar pieces, which goes into a modified round brick via this Technic pin. It's just the one with the hole all the way through in black, but you really couldn't tell that that's almost held up from a distance. So that can go from the angle position like that, but whoop, back to the 90 degrees. And then we can start to join these base pieces together on the top of the rocks. How about that? So you start to get an idea of where our base is going to go and what it's going to look like. If I just wheel up a little bit more, that's the underside of the sort of structure that holds up the big yellow units, of course. So that will be one of those on there in due course. Other things I've added are this great big trans clear bar thing coming out the side. I just thought I'd add another big fish. So this is a sawfish. And that can go kind of like that at any odd angle I want. I can position him. He's a bit wibbly. Whee! Boing! So that's good fun. And then I was starting to think about things like sea snakes, because there are snakes underneath the sea as well. Just put that, say, on there, going down the rock face. And I like the fact that you can angle all these things. It's like these fish, slightly different perspectives, slightly different angles in here. And this guy, of course, I could tilt so he's coming out towards us more if we wanted. It makes it look a lot more natural, or even going down or going up. So yeah, you can really play around with that. And I've taken that to the extreme in the next thing I've done, which is one of these feet, which is going to be right down on the plate here. And I've done it with 3 of the turtle pieces. So mounted in exactly the same way with these bars with the stud on the end into a pin, into one of these bricks. But doesn't that look wonderfully organic? I mean, I don't think turtles really sort of swim in formation as such, but, you know, I don't mind that. And I've got a lot of those round jumper plates in here, 3 basically, so I can have them all orientated at slightly different angles and still come back to the 90 degrees on the top, which I'll need to do to hold up the base. But you can also tilt these, which is quite wonderful, so you can have them sort of going up or going down, but I just think that looks fantastic, doesn't it? A bit of creation in using the pieces in a slightly different way. But yeah, I think that is just so organic and really good fun scene. So I'm going to have that sort of down here. If I just wheel down as one of the supports down there, and it'll just give a lot of life in front of the cave and all the rest of it. So yeah, really starting to look very interesting now. So what I really need to do is add a fistful of seaweed pieces into the rocks. I need to add some of the sort of coral pieces that have come in recent sets. Some of these that I've done on other rocks. Some of these that I've done on other rocks. Some more jellyfish, I think. And, well, some other stuff as well. Maybe even another Ninjago movie head. Maybe I'll have an octopus kind of, I don't know, here underneath. Yeah, he looks pretty fun there. The base there. So yeah, that's looking really nice. So I'm going to keep adding this wildlife until it's absolutely caked, much like the rock we did before and the base, which will kind of be over there. And then we'll be done. Okay, well, I'm going to have to do shaky hands cam to show you all the details that I've added, because it's looking pretty colourful and pretty lovely, if you ask me. So let's start over here with our sawfish and our little clump of jellyfish, which I've put onto those action pieces so they can kind of be drifting off. I think they do sort of cluster for whatever reason, drifting on the currents. And I've got loads of seaweeds and corals and things like that underneath. Purple starfish on the wall there, and a hermit crab, a bluefish, and a skull in an old diver's helmet, which somebody sent to the channel on one of the brick halls. Very nice indeed. There's that sponge, and both of our swamp creatures living in their cave with a fish. Just shows that they get on with nature. There are our turtles on that stanchion that's going to be holding up the whole base. So that's the front of the base, and the top of the base is going to be right up here. It just shows how much of an area it will cover all the way to the corner. And then my favourite bit, the bit that definitely took the longest, is getting all these fish kind of hanging out of the skull, which I think does still look like a skull. I've tried to keep it so, it's light grey with mainly dark grey around it. But that's pretty good. Then on top of that, we've got the anglerfish and the octopus. Looks very nice. Some more bluefish. Lots of sponges, that sea snake, even some friends undersea pieces in this sort of coral colour. So there's a fish there, and a seahorse, and a clamshell right at the top. Looking very nice indeed. Lots of little starfish pieces as well from friends. Clamshell, and a little tiny squiddy octopus thing at the bottom. Yes. So I think that whole scene is, wow, just as colourful as the one we did before, just in the same style, so in keeping, but with some really, really nice details that are just going to look great in the cabinet. I think my favourite probably actually isn't the skull, it's probably these turtles swimming in formation. They just look really happy and just swimming on by, unaware of all the construction and goings on of the humans in the area. So yeah. Wow, that does look really good. And our coral, of course, that echoes our play feature from the shark thing. So do tell me what you think of that. It's going to be even more impressive when it's completely all the way up to the corner and maybe coming out here a bit. I envisage it coming out right to about here. And then the sort of bit that is of the base that's on there and on there will sort of be mounted on rocks directly there. I think that's what I'm going for. I'm going to make that bit slightly less ornate over there because, well, it's going to be completely concealed by a base that's going to be basically there, blop. So this was more of a focus, which is why it took absolutely ages. To say that this took a while is underestimating it entirely. I mean, I did a lot of planning, got a lot of pieces ready before I started, and still it took an absolute age to build and then an absolute age to decorate. But the good thing is that it looks really, really nice. So it's worth the effort, quite frankly. And it's just towers over the one we did before, which was also quite a long session. But I really like the fact that we've got a few sort of small rocks also with plant life on now, kind of linking the two areas together. Like this used to be a single piece of rock, but there's sort of sand drifted over the lower parts of it. So I think that works really well. Yeah, I really like this home. With the boy swamp creature, it definitely looks like, it's inhabited. So yeah, that's really nice. So as always, tell me what you think. Tell me if I can improve things. Tell me if I've made a glaring mistake. Yeah, I think this is going to be really good. Now, for those of you expecting the really, really big ornate corals, that's going to be on the next level down in the cabinet. There's 4 levels in entirety. The surface level with all the boats on. This level, which has got all the bases on and the sort of more simple scenes. Lots of humans going around. The 3rd level is going to be the really crazy, wacky coral sort of level. And then the 4th level, UV lit, is going to be, well, completely otherworldly. So it kind of gets more and more weird the further down you go. But yeah, this is going to be great when we've got all of the base, the underwater sort of HQ built into all these stanchions and on top of it. So we'll have all that flash of yellow back. And that'll be just really good. It's absolutely massive though, isn't it? And the biscuit is going to be really hard to move. Well, that is getting very scary to move. But the good news is I didn't drop it and nothing fell off, would you believe? So yeah, it's worked rather well. Much better than the base fared. But there we go. Wow. And I think I've got the height absolutely right. It felt really tall when I was doing it in the building desk. I was kind of thinking that this would go over the top of the hill in the background, whereas I wanted it to be still visible. So it looks like the hill goes on and on, dot, dot, dot. So actually, I'm really happy with that. That's worked so well. And when we've done the next section, we won't have that glare of the cabinet lights so prominently, I don't think. Oh, yes, that's really good. We can see our swamp creatures very well and our turtles. And it just looks very dynamic with all those fish moving around and with the light changing as it is with my new filters on. Looking very good indeed. And it does look like a skull. I'm not sure about that gold tooth still, but it's quite funny. I quite like a bit of sort of silliness in my Lego builds and in my cabinet and in my city. So yeah, I don't really mind that. Oh, but I'm really chuffed with the height. It's really good. And I'm going to do a slightly bigger base when I put it back in. And it's actually going to be the right height so you can see into it from the side glass up here above this unit I've got of drawers. So you'll just be able to see into one of the levels. So that'll be even better. And I think it's going to be slightly higher than it was before as well. So you'll be able to see the sort of diving moon pool and things like that a little bit better. But yeah, there's so much detail on there. And I love these jellyfish actually. They're a good favourite now. All sort of going off in weird angles. Yeah. And what is also good is when you've got the sort of end of the bricks and the beginning of the glass at the back, and you can see things in cross sections. You can see these bits of seaweed very clearly. This fish and these jellyfish really stand out because they're on that transition between the real bricks and the backdrop. And given that we've put some sort of Lego weeds on the backdrop, I should put a few more in the foreground here, because then it'll really blend the two together, won't it? That'll be really, really good. Yeah, fantastic. Oh, and I haven't blocked that picture of the big squid in the background either. So very, very happy with how this is turning out. So it is slow progress, but it is very good progress as well. So I think we just have to be patient. Doing just this section or just this section takes an absolute age. So I think we've got at least one more section to go here, then the base on top of that, and then, well, we'll have the majority of this level done. I still want to do some more scenes in this sort of back section over here. I might move this big fish head and this pole and do goodness knows what else. But yeah, there's some area there. And I think there'll be some area over here as well where Robin's standing for some interesting things. But all that work blending in absolutely brilliantly. I think you'll agree. And then the closer you look, the more interesting things you find. I might put that diver skull somewhere a bit nearer the front, but yeah, the snake, the fish, the crab, the octopus, the anglerfish, the swordfish, the jellyfish, the orange fish in the skull, and the blue fish and the sharks. Oh, so happy! What do you think? So as always, thank you very much for watching. It is appreciated. Do remember to like, comment and subscribe for more awesome Lego videos. And if you value this channel, there are many ways in which you can support it. Do check out the links in the description below. And next time on Robin Hood Bricks, it'll be Wednesday, so we'll have a brick haul. And I've also got quite an expensive purchase for the channel, thanks to my Patreon supporters and my channel members who've made that possible. So I'll be opening that as well, and hopefully that'll improve videos in the future. So yeah, lots to look forward to. So until all of that, see you! Love those turtles.